and this is only the second time that this committee have met. 14th of January last year, when I had absolutely no idea what things were about. I know a little more now, but I certainly don't know everything. So hopefully I'm going to learn more tonight from you parish councillors. So item 2, have we any matters arising? Anyone with it? No, doesn't look like anyone has an item.
Yes, please.
There is. Councillor. Oh, Chris and Maria.
You want me to go first, Mayor?
Yes, please.
Chris Oswald-Jones, Faversham resident. I'm picking up on the minutes that should now been published for the 14th of January 2020, a year ago. Under any other business, it was agreed that the format of the meeting, which had been running for a few years, did not work well for the parish councils, and a different format would be considered.
Yes.
Having attended various parish council meetings, just as an observer, a general comment coming up from one or two was that the Faversham and District Engagement Forum was duplicating other forum, and it's just a talking shop. And my point now is, I feel that both or all the reinstated Swale area committees, this forum, Faversham and District, which is deliberately set out to include surrounding parishes, and there's also the Faversham Future Forum. They all interlink in various ways. Some matters might be duplicated, but I feel it's very worthwhile having a forum where this particular one is geared under the terms of reference for it to be guided by those that participate, not just set out as a town council agenda. So what I feel we need is a pointer from people like myself and others here tonight as to what we consider appropriate for discussion. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Does anyone have a comment on Chris's statement there? I take it we kind of agree with that. Christian Barker, Councillor Barker.
The only point to comment, and I don't, Chris, I'll have to take your your word, because you attend more of these than I do, and the various different guises.
Yes.
There is one element that we're going to talk through tonight that's on the agenda that I'm not sure is covered in any particular depth elsewhere, and it feels like the attendees from the parish council are also on because of it, which is the neighbourhood plan and the considerations around that. I'm not clear that any of those other bodies really touch on that and try and draw the parishes and the area together around that. I could be wrong, but welcome to discuss.
Off on that, Mayor?
Sorry, yes?
Yes, I appreciate Chris Barker is saying that the aspiration some 2 years ago, following on from the Faversham Creek, specifically the Creek neighbourhood plan, was for there, it was mooted in discussion, but didn't fulfil an aspiration for there to be a Faversham and immediately surrounding parish councils being included. But apparently, I'm not sure if it's the legal requirement, but we have now a Faversham, including the 4 wards of Faversham and not beyond, Faversham neighbourhood plan as a steering group sort of managing its progress. I feel it's well worth parish councillors listening and being aware of where our Faversham neighbourhood plan is developing, how it's developing and where it's going. Whether the parishes themselves have their own neighbourhood plan is of course up to them. But I feel a forum like this here today is where we can cross-fertilise, if that's the right word, ideas.
Thank you. So you are saying this is a very worthwhile engagement forum.
I'm saying it can be. It's down to us, the public, so on, and the parishes, for which this is predominantly designed to be inclusive in a forum. We'll wait and see how it pans out.
Thank you. Well, it would be good for me to know more about the parishes. I know very little, so I'm looking forward to that update. We can move on to item 3 unless there are any other comments. Unfortunately, I'm sure we all realise the Kent Police are not with us this evening. They are extremely busy, so we will quite understand, I think, that hopefully they'll be with us at the next meeting. So we do move on to item 4, and I do see, Chris, I remember the meeting last year, and I remember thinking we took so long to get to the parishes given their update that some people had left. So I'm really pleased that it's been brought to the beginning. So news and updates from the parishes. I'll ask the clerk if she will call you in, or I can see some of you.
I'm going in 5 minutes.
Oh, so I've got Jeff Tuck.
But I was coming back to the police report, actually, Alison.
Right.
The police won't come onto Zoom.
Right. They're not. Oh, I didn't know that.
Swale Area Committee of Calc, all we can get from them at the moment is a report. So there's something to bear in mind, that you could ask them for a report, but the police won't allow the officers to use Zoom.
Thank you for that information. That's very helpful. We will do that. Try and get a report. But we will move on to item 4, news and update from the parishes. I'll ask the town clerk if she will call you in if you wish to give a report. Is there anyone?
I can't see anybody's hand
With hands
raised.
up?
Or if anybody wants to use the chat, if that's easier, if you want to ask a question or say something in the chat box.
Perhaps you've come to hear, obviously, about the neighbourhood plan and the lottery and other items on the agenda, which is all very good. So nobody with any comments at the moment. Thank you. So we will move on.
Sorry,
yes.
Alison. Yes, Jeff's.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
Just to say that in Dunkirk, we obviously had this spectre of 1,750 houses that some of you have heard about. Just to let you know that it's still a watching brief. It's not an application. It's a bit of a distraction because they haven't done their homework. They haven't put forward a proper proposal to anybody. And in fact, whilst it's intended to go in Dunkirk, we were fortunate enough that Sarah from Bolton noted it to us, because they hadn't even told us that there was any inkling of a proposal. So not a good start from them, but we're keeping an eye on it.
Well done, you. And if we all keep connected, then that's how, yes, you learn some of these things, isn't it? Right. So anyone else from the parishes with an update? No, I think that's a no. So we're on to item 5, and Councillor Julian Saunders will give us an update on the district community lottery, which I, for one, am quite excited about.
Hey, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to share my screen because I've got a short presentation to share with you. So I hope this is going to work.
Yes, you're working.
So far, we're almost there. Okay, so yeah, I'm Councillor Julian Saunders, and as it says on the presentation there, on the slide there, I'm the chair of the Town Council's Lottery Working Group. I suppose I was also the person who first suggested we needed to look as a Town Council at how we best support the community and voluntary sector as we come out of the pandemic. So just to introduce the lottery, I think it's worth explaining to you how the town councils got to the stage of launching a district lottery. Back in the late spring, when the pandemic had arrived, I think, like lots of others, we started to realise it was going to have quite a profound effect on the town, and it would have a particularly challenging effect on the local community and voluntary sector. So at that stage, we started to engage with the sector and discuss with various organisations what we might be able to do to help as a town council. And I think it became fairly rapidly clear that the best thing we could probably do was to try and support the fundraising of local community organisations. And it's, I guess, it's worth emphasising that the sector is very broad, from very large organisations like Faversham Pools, the Alexander Centre, right down to small organisations. So we were being told that organisations had had their income dry up, and they were finding it very difficult to fundraise. So as a result of that, we started to explore ways of fundraising, and it became apparent after a bit of research that various other councils were running lotteries, community lotteries, and this was potentially a good way of bolstering the funding of local community and voluntary organisations. So we've worked through from there, and we've now got to the stage where we're only a couple of months off launching the lottery, and I'll come on and talk about that in a second. But I think firstly, it's worth emphasising to you as parish councils that there should be real benefits in having a Faversham and district lottery to you. I think first thing to emphasise is that it's a Faversham and district lottery. We decided fairly early on that it would be fairly artificial to have a lottery which just covered organisations that were based in the town council area. Quite a lot of organisations straddle boundaries anyway, and clearly people who live in the neighbouring villages tend to look towards Faversham for various functions and facilities, and a lot of the community-run organisations in the town are heavily used by people from around. So the community lottery, district community lottery, should firstly, for you as parish councils, it should be a help to organisations that are actually based in your parish who, like other voluntary sector organisations, are struggling with their income and struggling at present to raise funds. The community lottery, we see, will help protect those big community assets that I'm touching on, like the swimming pool, like the Alexander Centre, that are in the community sector and provide services to people right across the patch. And I think thirdly, running a community lottery will provide you with an opportunity, we hope, to build local community spirit and solidarity, and get everyone involved in supporting the community and voluntary sector and supporting those community assets that really make Faversham and the surrounding area what it is. So if you kind of leave this meeting this evening remembering two things, I'll be particularly pleased. The first one is that if you are in touch with local community organisations, we're having an initial good causes launch on Zoom at 11 o'clock this Friday. And at the end of the presentation, there's a link to that, and I'm sure the town clerk will be forwarding that link. And the second thing I'm hoping is that you will go away and tell local residents that there is going to be a district community lottery, and that it's an opportunity to help and support the voluntary sector in the local area. So how will the lottery work? Firstly, we're not going to manage it ourselves. In fact, we don't really want it to be seen as a town council lottery. We'd like it to be seen as a standalone kind of organisation. It's going to be externally managed. We've given a contract to the market leader in terms of running community lotteries, which is an organisation called Gatherwell, and they are basically doing most of the work for us, although Louise and the team are working very hard to start to publicise the lottery. There'll be a weekly draw, and the jackpot will, if someone picks 6 correct numbers, will be 25,000. Although potentially, if you had bought 3 tickets with the same numbers, you could push that up to 75,000 and onwards. Ticket sales will largely be online, so there will be a website, which I'll explain in a moment, where you can go to buy tickets, but it will also be possible to buy tickets via telephone and to ring up and make a debit or a credit card payment. There won't be Faversham community lottery machines in local shops. It's all going to be virtually or by telephone. So the website will be a place that will tell the public about the lottery and where they can go and buy tickets, but it won't be a single organisation website. It will have, we hope, tens and possibly hundreds of pages for individual organisations, because the way the Gatherwell Community Lottery model works is that you can either buy tickets and have your proportion of that ticket price go into a general fund, or you can buy tickets and have through a particular organisation page and have the huge majority of the good cause money go to that particular organisation. So it offers quite a high degree of flexibility and offers local people the opportunity to support particular causes that they feel particularly passionate and strongly about. 60% of the funding will go to good causes, and as lotteries go, that is a very high percentage. 20% goes on prizes. A large percentage then of the remaining money does go to Gatherwell for managing the lottery, but there are other costs as well that have to be met, and there's a certain amount of tax and licence buying. People tend to have 2 objections to lotteries. I would have to say I partly share them. The first is that we shouldn't be encouraging gambling. To reassure you in relation to this, Gatherwell have done a lot of work in ensuring that this lottery and the other lotteries they run don't appeal to people who are problem gamblers. There are limits on the amount of tickets you can buy on the day. The jackpot is relatively low compared with other lotteries, and all the evidence is that people who play most heavily are people in higher income groups who are really playing because they want to support their local community. The other objection that people often raise to lotteries is that, well, why are we having to fund these services, organisations, through a lottery? Shouldn't we be paying for it out of taxes? And certainly our view at this stage is that the town council and parish councils won't be able to have their own pages and raise funds for the lottery, because they are able to raise monies through the precept. But basically, in terms of other organisations, it will be any organisation that is a not-for-profit organisation that can have an organisational page. So just to finish up, the timetable. I mentioned the Good Cause launch before 15th of January. 23rd of February, ticket sales are going to begin. And on the 3rd of April, we're going to have the first draw. On the bottom of the presentation there, you've got the link, which I'm sure Louise will forward for the event on Friday. And I've also given you Louise's details and the website address for the district lottery. So I think that's it. I'm very happy to answer questions that people have got.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. I think that was put absolutely brilliantly. Thank you. I understood all of that. So if I did, I hope everyone else did as well. And I've only got one comment. Some of you will know, nearly 20 years ago, I applied for a lottery bid for our Jubilee Centre, and they gave us 250,000, which 20 years ago was a lot of money. And I remember when Sport England came and Marge Miller said to me, "Do you buy lottery tickets, Alison?" And I said, "Oh, no. A, we couldn't really afford it, and B, it's gambling." And she said, "No, Alison, if you put £1 in that pot and you don't win, you have to think it's providing a project like yours for someone else." So we don't buy many tickets, but we do. And I do think that way. It's not gambling, you're putting it in and hopefully it will provide another project. So are there any questions for Councillor Saunders? So we're all raring to go on that, and I feel quite excited. Oh, no, Jeff? Yes, sorry. Are you muted?
Thank you again.
Yeah.
Could you just tell me who's underwriting the prizes?
Councillor Saunders?
Yeah, okay. The company Gatherwell are underwriting the prizes. I knew nothing about lotteries before we started to work with them. Apparently, the way it works in this industry is that a company like Gatherwell would have insurance policies. So if the residents of Faversham turned out to be incredibly lucky and kept winning large prizes, their risk would be managed through the fact that they've got insurance. So that's how it works, basically.
Lovely, thank you, Julian.
Thank you. Any other questions?
There's a question in the chat box, Julian.
Yes.
Yeah, hold on a second. Let me just. Yes, okay. So the way it's working is Louise and the team have put out a general call to voluntary and community sector organisations, and I think we've got about 40 organisations attending on Friday. It's a very open approach. It's not like we're deciding who the good causes are. We're asking community and voluntary sector organisations to come forward and get involved. So we're hoping, and we're expecting that a large percentage of the organisations on Friday will sign up. It's not the end of the process; it's the start of the process. So if you're aware of organisations that would be interested, do encourage them to come along on Friday. And if they can't do that, encourage them to get in touch with Louise at Faversham Town Council.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Well, thank you then. We can move on, but just to say, hopefully that will be very successful and we can help many good causes. Item 6, Councillor Irwin, Faversham Neighbourhood Plan Update.
Thank you, Alison.
Thank you.
I'm going to give the update in part, and then Chris is going to share some slides and talk about what happens next. But what I thought we'd do, first of all, is just spend a few moments talking about where we've arrived at and the journey we've been over the last 12 months. And I apologise in advance, because I think at least 70% of you are aware of this and have heard it, but I think it's important just to understand the journey we've been on. So the decision to proceed with a neighbourhood plan started just over 12 months ago. It came to town council. Council voted to set one up, and then formed a steering group tasked with delivering a neighbourhood plan. I think, as Mr. Oswald Jones pointed out, and you all know, Faversham already has a neighbourhood plan. It has one for Faversham Creek. But really, this plan is quite different in scope, in that it covers the entire parish of Faversham. So it includes our 4 wards. And as I'm sure most of you know, Faversham, to an extent, extends beyond the actual current built-up area. A map's actually on our website, which is quite useful. So we set up a steering group, and just to describe the structure of that steering group to you, I'm the chair of that group. Alison is also on the group. Councillor PERKIN, who is with us, but we can't see her, is on the group, as is Anthony Hook, who I'm sure you all know, and then Chris as well. So 4 councillors on the group. In addition, we have 2 representatives from the community. So we have Harold Goodwin, who many of you may know. He's the chair of the Faversham Society, and we have Jeff, who was, as you know, responsible for the Faversham Future Forum. So, you know, the call for a neighbourhood plan isn't new, and actually, you know, it's been going on for some time. But what we're certainly trying to do is pull it together. So we started in January. And of course, none of us had a clue what a neighbourhood plan was. So it took us certainly, it took me a couple of months to actually understand what we were even trying to achieve. But what we did manage to achieve in April of this last year, we got our area designations. So the first step was to get the area recognised for a neighbourhood plan. What that meant was that we could avail ourselves of some professional support. So our efforts, we've got a variety of professional support on it. The council itself is funding a group called Urban Vision, who are acting as consultants to us. However, we have been successful in securing funding from locality, which covers a lot of the cost of Urban Vision. In addition, we've got free professional support from a group called ACOM, again, who've been put in place by locality. So a lot of professional support out there. But I think the real engine room of what we've been doing is our community and our community volunteers. So obviously the plan is open for everyone within the community to participate, but we have a core of around 10 volunteers, most of whom are actually retired, but who have had professional lives in areas which are of relevance to the neighbourhood plan, so that we're extremely reliant on volunteers to actually move the process forward. When we set out with the neighbourhood plan, like every neighbourhood plan, we were probably outrageously ambitious, and I think the plan was to go to referendum in May of this year. That's not going to be possible, partly because of COVID, but just partly because of the complexity of the task. And Chris will update us in terms of what the future time looks like in a minute. But what we were trying to do is really get ahead of the local plan, which we realise is probably something which was relatively futile given the additional resource that they've got. We did, however, lobby hard through the local plan process, and you know, to identify any victories in it. One of the victories I think for us as a community and as a neighbourhood planning group is the development that Faversham is taking is to the east of the town rather than to the west of the town. We had significant concerns about development to the west for a number of reasons, partly related to the landscape sensitivity, but really because of the issues of congestion and traffic pollution to the west of the town. So we were extremely pleased with the geography of the allocation. So as I'm sure all of you know, within the neighbourhood plan, or sorry, within the local plan, we expect to be allocated an additional 3,300 houses in Faversham. That was certainly more than we wished to take, but I think it's a reality that they have to go somewhere. And personally, my preference is that we continue to build Faversham rather than, as Jeff's already highlighted, building these islands out in the middle of the countryside. I don't think that's a sensible way to pursue development. So, you know, as the least worst outcome, I think it's fair enough. In terms of what those allocations are, you're probably aware of them, but it's worth going through them, not least because I think all bar one sits to an extent in parishes beyond Faversham. So there's the well-known Duchy of Cornwall site, which is 18,226 in SLA terms. So that's a site for 2,500 houses. We have another site described as east of Faversham, so essentially to the east of Love Lane, between the Graveney Road and the A2. That is a site for 600 houses. That site is actually owned by Kevin Atwood, who I'm sure some of you at least know. I know David, you'll be aware of this. He has quite significant farming interests, I think, within your area. And we have Preston Fields. Preston Fields is already in the local plan and actually has outlined planning permission for 250 houses. There'll be an extra 70 houses, up to extra 70 houses going onto the Preston Fields site. That site is owned by a family. I understand that in part they farm locally. So we met with a gentleman called Jonathan Elworthy. I don't know if anyone's aware of the family. And then last but not least, on Graveney Road, there is another site for 240 houses, and it's owned by the Prudential. And I never knew this, but Prudential are actually significant landowners across England. So they own that site. We have met with all the site owners and their promoters. We've had at least one meeting with them. We've actually had, I think, 3 meetings with the Duchy. We actually met with them prior to the site allocation, but we've met with all the other developers to date. I think one thing of note as well that you may be aware of already, Faversham will be getting an additional secondary school. That secondary school is going to go on to the Graveney Road site, at least in part. So it's going to be in that part of the town. And then there'll be additional primary school provision as well. So the exact locations of those to be determined, but I think within the east of Faversham site and the Duchy site, we'll have new primary schools as well. So having met with the developers, you know, developers are developers. Developers do what developers do, but they're all relatively open about their intentions. Many of certainly at least 2 of those sites are in relatively local ownership, and, you know, taking everyone at their word, they're keen to support us, work with us, and you know, as the plan proceeds. So far, nothing negative to report back. I think they've been pretty productive meetings to date. Are there any questions at this stage before I pass over to Chris? Jeff?
You're saying that the sites are allocated.
Yeah.
Have they been actually confirmed by SBC?
So I know we've got at least 2 SBC councillors on the call, so they can, or 3 actually, if you correct me if I'm wrong. The process has been, the officers presented the recommendations to the local plan panel. They were agreed at local plan panel. I believe they've been agreed at cabinet within Swale, and as far as I'm aware, they've been agreed with the council as well. The draft look, obviously, however, they haven't gone out to consultation yet. My understanding is that there is a local plan panel meeting next week on the 19th, and we should see a draft of the local plan, obviously, in advance of that meeting. So, you know, clearly things can change, but I think it's a reasonable planning assumption that they're allocated and will go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you.
If it helps, that draft of the local plan is due for publication on Thursday, is
Okay.
what I've been told.
Great, thank you, Ben.
Yes, thank you. That's good to know.
So we've got a question from Sonia. What control does Faversham have over type of housing? So that's a really good question. And Chris and I were just talking about it just today. Within the plan itself, there'll be a number of approaches. Firstly, we'll have a set of broadly generic policies, so policies that apply across the entire town to any new development. In addition, there are a number of sites in the town where we will develop specific policies, sites which are of interest to the town. In terms of what the types of housing and what they look like, what we're doing is we're developing a design guide. So that will determine elements of what the housing looks like and how it's built. So that design guide and the plan should be in place at the time that reserve matters planning applications go in. In terms of housing types, I'm not quite sure if I've understood your question correctly, but one of the concerns that we have are the types of housing that's currently built doesn't necessarily meet the needs of the town. There has been a housing needs assessment which was conducted in collaboration with the Community Land Trust. We've identified a need for a much wider variety of housing in terms of its style, in terms of its size. We need more starter homes, 2-bedroom homes. We'll be pushing for housing types like terrace housing. In terms of affordable housing, it's something that obviously, and I'll ask actually Ben to comment on this if he wishes. Obviously, Swale will dictate the amount of affordable housing which is made available. One thing that we will be doing is attempting to identify some smaller sites that may be suitable for community development. And I know the Community Land Trust is keen to develop truly affordable housing. I think we could debate all night whether affordable housing is actually affordable, but it's something that we're going to be pushing for. And we do have an element of control over it, but essentially what the neighbourhood plan will be are planning guidance and guidelines. It will be very much dependent on developers taking that up. Janet, I think you wanted to update us. You could update us.
If you'd like me to, I was discussing this with one of the planning policy team this morning. Obviously, it's a draft local plan. It will be consulted on and then go to the inspector. But at the moment, the plan is that in brownfield sites, which are more expensive to develop, there will be a requirement, once you've got a development of more than 15 houses, there will be a requirement of 20% affordable housing. Yeah. And then on greenfield sites, once you get to 10 houses, there'll be a requirement of 30% affordable housing. That's as it stands at the moment. And this will be right across the borough, because previously we had borough-wide. Then in the last local plan, we had different ones for Faversham, Sittingbourne, Sheppey. But it's going to go back to 1 or 2 right across the borough.
Okay, thanks, Janet. That's really interesting. David has asked what the geographical area for the neighbourhood plan is. It's restricted to the parish of Faversham, which is the four electoral wards. So what that means is, David, for the sites that I mentioned, for instance, the site east of Faversham, about 50-ish% of that site is within the boundary of Faversham. For the Duchy site, I think it's probably near 80% is within Faversham. For the Graveney Road site, I think again it's about 60% and so on. So it differs, but essentially neighbourhood plan is relevant for Faversham. Jeff.
Sorry, John. Sorry to interject, Jeff. John, is it worth expanding on the request the Town Council made to ask Swale to consider extending the boundaries of Faversham?
That's on the agenda, Chris. It's the next agenda item.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jeff, you had a comment?
Only to say the proportion of the Duchy land that's in Faversham is a lot less than 80%.
Right, okay. Yeah.
There's
So
26% in Bolton and about 10% in Selling.
Right, okay, thank you. So practically, what that'll look like practically, and this has been a topic of discussion with the developers. Now, clearly, if you've got a development and 50% of it sits within Faversham and 50% of it sits without Faversham, technically and legally, the neighbourhood plan doesn't apply to the 50% that sits outside of Faversham. Practically, and following discussions with the developers, it's highly improbable that they will ignore the neighbourhood plan for 50% of the site. So what that means practically, if they have to comply with certain requirements of the neighbourhood plan, they're not going to change those requirements halfway up a street as it goes into another parish. Jeff. Sorry,
but particularly with the Duchy, it ought to be taken into account that there's 26% is in Bolton, and Bolton and Dunkirk are having trouble getting a neighbourhood plan, but we are doing one. And obviously our criteria need to be taken into account when looking at the Duchy site.
Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. And I think you know, just to go back to one of the brief discussions that's kicked us off this evening, what's the purpose of this meeting? And I think the purpose of this meeting is to highlight these issues and highlight the fact that that's where we need to collaborate.
Definitely.
If Terry would like to speak.
Sorry?
Terry.
Yeah, Terry?
Yep. Yes, I mean, just to add to that point about that, I mean, clearly we've had a neighbourhood plan running for a couple of years now with some difficulty. The issue that we have, of course, now in Bolton is understanding that you want to move the boundary. This was the first we've heard of this as a member of the council here. So I'm here tonight to find out exactly what you're proposing, because that will have an effect upon our neighbourhood plan as well as our own council issues. And the particular question I have is the impact of traffic. You've talked about Graveney, you've talked about the A2. But what you've described to me is a bulk of housing being built the whole way up to as far as Bolton past the roundabout. The impact of traffic on that and upon ourselves in Bolton is going to be horrendous. Has that been discussed?
Yeah, so I think it's a good point, Terry. The first thing I think, you know, and I'll let you know, Chris comment on this as well. Firstly, we didn't decide on housing allocation, and actually we were actively opposing the need to take 3,300 houses within Faversham. So I think that's worth making that clear. So, you know, my preference would have been for far fewer houses. And I think I said it was the least worst solution, or the least worst outcome we could see. You know, clearly, if we have to take 3,300 or 3,500 houses, the choice, which isn't our choice in any case, to be clear, is that it was preferred that they were in the east, where there were already some roads and appropriate communication routes, rather than to the west, where essentially we purely have the A2. Given that there's an additional 10,000 houses, my understanding is coming at Tenham. But to be clear, I'm no way going to sit and justify the housing allocation or where it is. It wasn't my choice, and I disagree with it. but we work with.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anna.
Paul, is it Paul?
Yeah, it's Paul. I just had, why haven't the developers contacted Bolton Parish Council?
That's a really good question, Paul. And what I'd say is not a single developer contacted Faversham Town Council. You know, we pursued them, we found out their details, and we wrote to them.
Right. Just seemed a bit strange that they would contact, or you seem to have got on contact, and whilst we no contact.
We are. I think you're right. Jeff is there. Very.
So
Jeff?
once again, just to say that the Bolton and Dunkirk neighbourhood plan did have some interaction with the Duchy, but they didn't actually contact Bolton or Selling. So we're aware of it. And on the percentage of land, that would make about 625 of the Duchy houses to be in Bolton.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can only urge you to reach out and try and contact them as we did.
Yeah, I think
Nothing I can suggest.
that's, and be persistent. Christian, are you coming in now with?
Yeah, I think Ben, do you want to say anything
Was it
about
Ben?
affordable housing, Ben? Because obviously it's within your domain as well.
Yeah, just to be very clear, in terms of affordable housing, there are many different types, and there's different things that need to be taken into consideration. I mean, in an ideal world, we'd all say all we want is 100% affordable housing for people that live locally already, but that's not something that we can get in any way, shape, or form. One of the reasons why the decision's been to go for 30% on greenfield and the 20% figure on brown is so that we can ensure that we get the adapted properties that we need as well. So it's all well and good having a 2 up, 2 down property, but if you can't widen the doorways or fit a stair lift in, etc., when people need them put in, you just build up a problem for later on. So the key element is actually making sure that we're not just getting the right quantum, but we're getting the right quality when we get affordable dwellings going forward. In addition, affordable covers so many different things. Personally, I prefer to see more social housing, which is the reduced price rent, pretty much like the old council houses. But there's also the affordable rent, which is anything up to the local housing allowance rate. You've then got about 20 different products that the government have put in at different stages, which are affordable purchase properties. So that's your shared ownerships, your rent to buy, your market discount, and God knows how many other things. The majority of the affordable housing, or the attempt in the local plan in terms of the affordable housing, is to get the majority delivered as affordable rent and social rather than affordable purchase. And hopefully we can get that. But we do have to bear in mind as well that in the hierarchy of things, highways infrastructure comes first on the list when it comes to Section 106 negotiations, then your health and your education, then anything else, then you've got your environmental considerations, then you've got affordable housing, and then you've got anything else that's just nice for the community, like an extra play area or whatever. So we do know that it's one of the areas that's generally wanting to be cut by developers when they come in and start saying, I can't make my guaranteed 16% profit margin that I'm entitled to. So do bear that in mind. And that's the other reason I think why Swale have looked more to the east this time round than to the west of the borough, because actually in the west of the borough, the profit margins for developers are so small that they seem to be able to get away without delivering the infrastructure and the affordable housing and the environmental standards that we would want. And because the house prices in the east are that much higher, it just sort of ends up that way. So it is the only way of guaranteeing that we would get the infrastructure and the improvements we want and the environmental standards that we all want and the affordable housing that we need, and still delivering the housing numbers that we're required to deliver by government, or they take planning away from us and start doing it themselves.
Thank you, Ben. That's really useful.
Terry.
Sorry, can I ask you a question about the schooling arrangements? You mentioned the secondary school and the primary school being built to the east there. This is good news to us in Bolton, of course, because our school is already full. But of course, the impact of that is the additional travel of children into that area to the new schools. Again, it's another infrastructure issue, which I hope is being addressed by the planners. Or not.
That's a good point, Terry. I don't think anyone on the call could necessarily answer that.
Answer that, no.
Can just before Chris, you're going to come in and talk a little bit about our next steps. Just to you know, we are very, and Jeff, you know, in terms of what you're doing with the Bolton and Neighbourhood plan, we have monthly meetings, which of course you're welcome to attend. We're happy to have separate meetings with you to discuss where our plans overlap and how we make them harmonious. You know, we're available to do that, and I hope we certainly try to make that clear in all our communications.
Cool. Thank you for that, as we've always been open as well.
Yeah, right.
John, they're butt in, Chris Oswald-Jones.
Yeah.
Yes.
One point that's not been mentioned, and if I've got the facts correct, is one point on a duchy is, of course, on their costings, they don't have to buy the land.
Yeah. Chris, I lost you.
I think that was it.
That was the main point, was the fact that on the duchy area,
oh.
the duchy development and so on, the duchy don't have to buy the land. They've got a cost saving. So that helps on whatever you want to go on, affordable housing, wherever.
Yeah. Well, the duchy doesn't pay corporation tax either, but I don't think that comes into it. But that's a debate for another time.
Yes, I think you're
right. Could I just add, before I talk through the timeline, which will probably be familiar to a number of you anyway, that there's one area that hasn't been picked up in this discussion that still leaves, I feel, us all collectively open to risk, is in the local plan. It is allocating a considerable number. The number unfortunately escapes me, but it's in the low thousands from memory, to windfall houses, and it bases the allocation of those houses on the fact that as a borough we have collectively delivered a number of small developments that have been a relatively substantive proportion of the developments over time, and that it feels that it still has the space and capacity to do so. The local plan panel would have us believe that it's a good policy on the basis that it allows them to sponsor small to medium enterprise developers. What I will say is that given that is a considerable volume, and Jeff's just put in the comment that potentially close to 3,000. I think the volume of housing we've got to the east of the borough isn't necessarily the end of the matter, and it doesn't guarantee that other new sites may not be placed within any of our boundaries. But again, you know, we aren't a planning authority, and we aren't able to influence that particularly in tonight's discussion, but it's worth us, or none of us, losing sight of that. I'm going to share my screen quickly to talk through a couple of slides that I've pulled together for this. Do let me know when you can see them. Oh, wrong one. Bear with me. I think it's gone up on the wrong deck, isn't it? What I will do, sorry, is I will, bear with me. I will probably just share it as it is, and then hopefully just move that and do that. Bear with me just a second, and I'll be right with you. There you go. Just bring. Hopefully you can all see that.
Yeah.
I guess a couple of things, just to go back and echo the beginning of John's piece, that where we have got to in the local plan is in no small part to a huge engagement of the local community and the members of the Faversham Future Forum that have really put in a sterling effort for gathering evidence and helping us produce the sort of public engagement so far, so the public exhibitions. Without them, we really wouldn't be as far as we are now. So this slide is born of conversations with Swale Borough Council and the local planning team, or the planning team, and much of it is fairly formulaic. Certainly the next slide. This first slide really is to show that we've had a number of kind of public engagements. We had the 2 public exhibitions earlier in or towards the end of 2020, which were very successful and got a lot of feedback, which is really positive engagement. We've since issued a resident survey, which we've received a good level of feedback on, and we're compiling and collating the input of those. And we are shortly to launch the business surveys and youth surveys, which will run through early parts of February. And all of that is part of the wider public engagement process that is not only recommended, it's sound in terms of gauging exactly what your neighbourhood plan should contain. And as a consequence, we are already starting to draft policies for the draft neighbourhood plan, and we will continue as the input comes in from the business and youth surveys to embellish with that. Our hope is that we will have a reasonably good draft document by the end of March. And at the bottom of this slide, we talk about calls for sites. The local plan makes in it, in the sort of the versions that we've seen very early drafts of, provision for Faversham Town Council to allocate 200 houses within the neighbourhood plan, and we issued a call for sites recently, and that's being managed by, I think, a company called ACOM for us. We're expecting that to complete in the early parts of February, and again that will influence our plan. Moving on beyond that, we will look to finish our draft plan within probably 6 weeks of the beginning of next financial year and moving into the following civic year. After which the process is a fairly well documented and laid out path for us. So it will go to Swale Borough Council for review and approval, after which we will conduct a consultation on the draft plan as Faversham Town Council, and then subsequently make any updates we get on the back of that consultation, should we deem any of the input appropriate to change and update our draft plan. We will then push that to pre-application consultation for formal submission with the Swale Borough Council, and having undertaken the Swale Borough Council application consultation, it will then move to an independent examination, which again we can then take on board any recommendations within the neighbourhood plan, and then we will publish and formally move to a referendum, which we are hoping for at this stage, assuming that we can get the support and the timings from the local planning authority, Swale. We're hoping for kind of Q1 2022, that should say, not 2021, because that's not this year. So it's moved out from where we had ambitions to get to in the early parts of last year, partly because of the inability to engage in the way we'd have liked as soon as we'd like, and frankly partly because I didn't at least understand all of the necessary steps to go through before we hit that referendum. But that's where we are now. I think we're in a good shape, having started to draft some of the policy areas, and just awaiting kind of the final stages of community engagement, really. Happy to take questions if there are any. Jeff.
Duty to consult with neighbouring parishes?
I think we need to consult with the community in which it's impacted by Jeff. Strictly speaking, that's what we formally need to do. I think it's important, as we've just discussed, given that the neighbourhood plan is likely to impact developments which sit within both of our boundaries. I think it's useful for us to engage with all of those parishes, including Bourton and Dunkirk. So, welcome that engagement, really. I mean, I would hope, Jeff, that we can actually produce a plan and consider, the engagement with Bourton and Dunkirk before it gets the consultation. But I'm sure we'll move that forward. Sonia, did I see that you'd raised a hand?
Yes, I think it was the wrong icon. I wasn't saying hi. I was trying to raise my hand. Yeah. Yeah, it was quite a lot to take in on the two slides. So could you just clarify, what was the referendum at the end? What's that actually? What's that scope?
Ultimately, it's a question that's put to the residents of Faversham whether they would like to accept and adopt the neighbourhood plan.
Right. And the 200 houses that you were mentioning on the first, so what? I'm just a bit confused about that particular bit, sorry.
So in addition to the houses that John described,
okay, right,
within the local plan is looking in its overall target of 10,000 and whatever it is, that Faversham Town Council allocates 200 within its
right, yeah. Okay, I thought so. I was just okay.
Sorry.
Jeff.
Is that from an observed and accounted for need? Sorry, I meant objectively assessed need as per Swale's own figures, etc.
Faversham's undertaken its own housing needs assessment, as has the local plan, and the volume of housing it's looking to target, including that which Faversham Town Council got to find, has predominantly been set by government targets, I think. So whether that whole review is objectively met by, and agrees with the housing needs assessment is potentially neither here nor there.
Thank you.
John.
So I'll just say a word on the call for sites, because one of the things which I think is quite jarring, and I suspect a lot of people are thinking it, is like, why on earth would you dream of doing a call for additional sites when you've already taken 3,300?
Exactly.
Quite a legitimate question, and I think there's a number of answers to that. One is that, and just to come back onto the issue of windfall, neighbourhood plans can't necessarily be used to block development, and in fact, clearly our neighbourhood plan isn't blocking development because we're taking some more new housing. That said, by actually going through an exercise of attempting to identify sites within the town which may be suitable for development, we can at least say that we have gone through an exercise and we've considered all available housing sites, and these are the only ones that we think are suitable or appropriate for housing coming forward. So it may, and these may give us a degree of protection against windfall housing. The other kind of really key element to it is there are a number of brownfield sites within the town which are currently vacant. I could use an example. There are two large sites owned by KCC that have derelict buildings on them. you know, to our mind, we would much rather see areas and land like that given up for affordable housing and probably social housing, as Ben described it, rather than sitting vacant and derelict. In addition, because we will be, let's be positive, assuming the plan is adopted, we'll be replacing the Creek neighbourhood plan, and there are some sensitive sites around the creek, and we are keen to ensure that they're developed sensitively and appropriately. So, you know, it's not a call for sites. We're expecting to allocate another greenfield site of 800, but they will be up to 200, probably across multiple sites through the town.
Any other questions? No? I think that was a brilliant update. Thank you. Well, I've certainly learned things and I'm on the committee. Right, we've got item 7 now is community governance, and that's John again, isn't it? John, are you talking about this?
I could certainly kick off a discussion of which I suspect there'll be quite a bit. So as we've been developing the neighbourhood plan, and I suppose once we had the draft site allocations from Swale, we've already discussed it, but it's become clear that there will be sites that will be built out over the next 15 years that will sit significantly outside of Faversham. Now, one of the mechanisms which is available to be exercised by borough councils, so in this case Swale Borough Council, it's not something we can exercise ourselves. There's something called a community governance review, and the reason community governance reviews were put in, certainly if you read the guidance, they're put in to ensure that boundaries can change to reflect the communities as they evolve. So essentially, there will be like I said, 3,500 homes in Faversham who will be using Faversham services, whose children will be going, I presume, largely to Faversham schools, using Faversham healthcare facilities. And if without a community governance review, without changing the boundaries of Faversham, what that means is we would end up having a lot of people who live in Faversham, consider themselves Faversham residents, identify with Faversham, but would have no Faversham representation. In other words, it wouldn't be represented on our parish council. So we felt it was appropriate to raise it with Swale Borough Council and request that they consider doing a community governance review. So the decision about whether to do a community governance review is not up to us. It's simply a request we put to Swale Borough Council. So we discussed it and agreed it at our at a council. It wasn't our last council meeting, the council meeting before that, and that request has gone to Swale. I don't know if anyone else from Faversham wants to make a comment on that. I know Jeff, you want to come in. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to echo your thoughts, really. I mean, you know, these are houses that, to all intents and purposes, will be within the Faversham boundary at that point, because they'll be next door to houses that genuinely are in the same postcode. And whilst I appreciate they may straddle parish boundaries at the moment, they'll be linked by roads and their neighbours to Faversham town. And certainly for me, I think it's important that they have representation. So just echo your thoughts, John. Really.
Jeff.
Yeah, I think it's a bit disingenuous to talk about Faversham's healthcare and Faversham schools. They're KCC or the CCG, and therefore the area. They just happen to be physically in Faversham. And the thought that you now want to redraw the boundaries to take in a large proportion of Bolton, I really do see this as the wrong way round. This discussion should have happened with Bolton and Selling probably and Gravely before you thought about trying to go for a review of the boundaries.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you. In response, while I agree the proposed or potentially proposed developments are not, I think, what we are looking at initially. One of my concerns is, for example, I don't know what Bolton Parish Council does for the Oast House on the A2, which is right next to Desmond Crescent. I don't know how many times their parish councils have visited there. That's one example. There are some because of development of agricultural buildings and agricultural land for housing purposes, which are adjacent to the boundary of Faversham. Indeed, there are some where, because the postal address is in Graveney, the houses that the residences behind are mobile caravans, homes for people who work on the farm. They're in the Graveney parish because of where their post is delivered. Yet the houses immediately onto the A2 on them are in Faversham. So there are some anomalies, and that's part of the reason for the request for the community governance review. And Faversham's boundaries have been changed on a number of occasions by the Electoral Commission, and it was with a view, partly with a view to the fact that those sort of boundaries are going to be looked at as well. That if you ask for a community governance review, whilst there is talk of a constituency review for Parliament and others, it may mean that we can actually have a dialogue where we actually get something sensible, rather than trying to patch it together. And I'll go back, I'll refer now to Councillor Tubb again.
Yes. Jeff.
One might as well put it the other way and say that Preston Fields and Love Lane are close to Bolton and Graveney. They should be incorporated into those two parishes rather than Faversham Town. That's a ridiculous way of looking at it.
So just to be clear, Jeff, and I think that this maybe is a point which isn't I haven't made clear and probably isn't clear to most of us on here.
No.
The determination of whether people remain within new houses remain within Faversham or remain within another parish ultimately will be made by the residents of those new houses. So actually, you know, what I want or you want is ultimately academic. I think it's relevant and important, but actually it'll be determined by the people who live in those houses and ultimately where they identify with, you know. So I think it's about people's identity and where they feel they can get representation. And that's what I meant by, of course, our schools are KCC schools, and of course our health centres are, but ultimately what I'm talking about is where people identify with.
Can I ask about procedure about this one, because it seems to me as a member of Bolton Parish Council, it's the first I've heard about this. Should not Swale have come to us first of all to raise this issue? I also have a question about the fact that those residents presently in Bolton, have they been consulted at all about the fact they may become part of Faversham? Not new residents, the ones who are presently there at the moment. There's no discussion, no consultation at all. Why is not?
So my understanding is this isn't a process which happens overnight. In fact, if a community governance review Swale decide to do it, it's going to take several years to actually feed through. So in terms of consultation, I think we haven't even started the process. We have raised it with Swale as something we'd like them to consider to do. So it's quite a long and involved process. And I think a lot of that comes through the process itself.
Well, yes, that's quite, I understand that, John. But the point is, you've been talking about neighbourhood plan, and you've been talking about subsuming some of Bolton area into your neighbourhood plan. Yet we haven't, as you're saying now, that may be years ahead. No. To be clear, it will be subsumed into our neighbourhood plan. Our neighbourhood plan will be complete probably 2 or 3 years before any community governance review takes place. We're talking about what's appropriate for the future. And actually starting that process. I accept that, John, but we have a plan as well, and they will plan ourselves, which of course at the moment subsumes that area we're talking about. Yeah. So at some point, someone's got to come to that and look at the logic of what we're saying here. Is our neighbourhood plan going to assume land that doesn't belong to us anymore, or not?
Christian?
When I think about the houses that will be built and their proximity to the town centre of Faversham and the houses that are within the boundaries of Faversham, I can only assume that those people will come to the town centre to use its shops, to go to its pubs, to come to the events. And it would feel odd to me, unless you're in a massive conurbation the size of somewhere like London, that a specific part of a town would be considered outside of that town's boundaries. And as John says, I think it's worth bearing in mind that we are not trying to extend the boundaries of the neighbourhood plan. We're not even suggesting what the outcome will be. That's Swale to decide. It's Swale to review this. But it would seem to me that if there's one conurbation that stretches all the way from kind of the Western Link all the way through to Homestall Lane, and that is one conurbation, that people would consider themselves part of Faversham within that geographic area. I think it's not unreasonable to think that.
Butt in, John. Chris Oswald-Jones.
Yes.
Yeah. We're in danger of, well, I think we have already, people are conflating. Faversham neighbourhood plan is restricted to Faversham within its current 4 wards, full stop. That is the neighbourhood plan, our neighbourhood plan. Bolton and the other parishes have their own ongoing neighbourhood plans. This now, item 7, community governance review, is, as I understand it, a review by Faversham town members, whether they be councillors or some members of the public, as to a question being thrown towards, as Chris Barker has said, the Swale process, not the Faversham town process, and to continue to conflate item 6 with item 7 is confusing and dangerous. That's it.
Can I thank Chris for that? I think we're very clear that the two things are completely different, and the governance review is kicking it down the road. But we don't know what you're talking about. You've obviously talked about this and discussed it, where you want your boundary to be drawn, and you're probably going to draw it around part of Bolton and Selling. I mean, have you got designs on Ospringe and all as well? And where are you drawing these lines, and what are you asking Swale to look at?
I'll be there, yeah.
So Jeff, just to interrupt you.
It's in the dark.
Yeah. Jeff, just to interrupt you, we sent a message to Swale. I think, in fact, we could probably read it verbatim, simply requesting that they conduct a community governance review. We didn't draw any plans. We haven't got maps with red lines around them. We haven't shared them with anyone. They don't exist. So just to be clear, I think it's important we don't get ahead of ourselves in terms of pretending or assuming what anyone's done here. We simply requested a community governance review.
With all due respect, you don't request something like that if you don't have designs on certain areas. And I think in that case, you should have used the necessity to consult by talking to Orr and Ospringe and Selling and Bolton and Graveney. You know, it's no good you asking.
You should make those assumptions.
What if they come back and say that you should have half of Kent? You know, it's crazy. You can't go and do this without speaking to the other parishes.
Well, back to John. We've just asked for this to
like I said,
Swale make the decision, won't they, surely?
So in terms of, I'll give you my opinion, because I think it's the only thing it can reasonably do. I can't speak for everyone. Personally, I think it should incorporate new areas of housing. This around Faversham. It's, as Chris said, I think it's logical. Equally, I think it's illogical that some elements of Faversham are elements of Faversham. For instance, I live right near Ospringe, and part of the greater part of Ospringe village sits within Faversham. Maybe that's an anomaly that needs to be managed as well. So I think there's probably several anomalies across the board.
I think you're right. Right. Unless we can, I think we've probably discussed the neighbourhood plan and community governance, but yeah, that's way in the future, isn't it? So if we can go on to the Swale
if I may,
yes,
and I have had my hand up on this one.
Oh,
Just
sorry.
to be very, very clear, when the item was discussed at Town Council, no one came in with a preconception of what was wanted to happen. What was put forward was that there are boundary positions that make no logical sense and don't go on natural lines. There are elements, I think you've said yourself, Jeff, there's a triangle of land which is in Selling Parish, north of the M2, in the middle of Bourton Parish, essentially, on the Duchy land, which is an anomaly and a bit illogical in itself. There's cases where you've got part of Faversham, one house that's in Faversham, the house directly opposite is in Ospringe Parish. And actually, does that make sense, or is the line in the wrong place? And I think the question mark was, let's not forget, community governance reviews could turn around and say, actually, you need to form a new parish of South Faversham, or Faversham without, as it used to be. It could go back to the pre-1974 boundaries.
It might do anything.
It might do nothing. But that's the thing. It is a case of turning around and saying, do the boundaries make sense? And actually, when new housing is built, we're going to get to the point eventually where ward boundaries changed in terms of district and county division boundaries. Now, I understand where you're coming from, Jeff. We should have come and spoke to you first. And you know what? I'll hold my hands up on that one and say, yeah, if there was a local engagement forum last year before this came up at Town Council, I'm sure we would have done it. But for obvious reasons, there weren't local engagement forums last year. And, all I can do as a town councillor is apologise for that. But what I'm getting at is that, we don't know what the results of a community governance review would be. Yeah. We do know that as housing is built and areas are developed, the likelihood is that district council ward boundaries and county division boundaries are likely to have to change to ensure that each councillor represents a similar number of people. And when that is done, one of the elements that is considered is the area within a single parish. They don't like to have a ward councillor that represents 1.5 parishes, or you have a bit of housing from this parish go into another ward councillor's division. So it is a case that's something that will need to be considered. And realistically, a lot of this housing isn't going to be built in 5 years' time. It's not going to be built in 8 years' time. It's going to be 15 to 20 years' time. And we're just asking for that to be considered, so that when the ward boundary reviews are done, when the division boundary reviews are done further down the road, and when the constituency boundary reviews are done, it makes sense. I mean, from my point of view, I really don't understand how Orr is in Sittingbourne and Sheppey parliamentary constituency. It makes no sense whatsoever. Most of the people I speak to in Orr look to Faversham for its services. But because of the way the community governance is at the moment, and the fact that it's in Tenham and Linstead ward, it's going to be in Sittingbourne and Sheppey. It's an oddity, and I think it wasn't done with any malice. It wasn't done with this idea that let's expand Faversham. It was done with this idea of let's try and make sure that the boundaries that exist when the housing is built make sense, and it was done completely innocently and with no preconception of what will actually come out of it. As I say, I mean, I could find myself no longer living in Faversham, and if that's the case, that's the case.
Right. I think there isn't anyone else to come in on that, so I think time is running on. Oh, Jeff, are you coming back?
I've got to say, but I'll hold it for now because it's just going on.
It is a little bit. So thank you. Item 8 is Swale area committees. I think that's Julian, Councillor Saunders. Is that you?
Yeah, I'm going to speak to this. I'm just going to put up one slide this time, but I think it might be helpful just to summarise what I'm going to talk to. Yeah, so I just wanted to answer 4 questions in relation to this. I've donned a new hat for this because as a Swale Borough Councillor, I'm the Vice Chair of the Eastern Area Committee, which basically covers the Swale East area plus Faversham. So let's try and answer these 4 questions. I think really this item is partly for information, but I think there's the possibility of perhaps a bit of discussion on it as well, because I think what we need to do as an engagement forum is really to try and make sure that the engagement forum complements the area committee and doesn't duplicate its work, and that both committees or meetings have a value to them. So why has Swale set up area committees? Well, I think there are two reasons that the coalition, the new coalition that's running the council when it came in, wanted to do this. The first was a concern to engage the full membership of the council a bit more in the development of council policy. So to have more opportunities for ordinary members of the council as opposed to cabinet members to discuss and influence council policy. And secondly, was a desire to engage more effectively with the public and various other public elected bodies, which as I understand it, was probably the reason that in previous times the engagement forums were set up. So the members of area committees are firstly the Swale Borough members for the particular area, and the eastern area covers Faversham, it covers Bolton and Courtney, and it covers Tenham and Linstead. So it's got 13 Swale councillors in it. Sorry, it covers East Downs as well. Sorry, David. The other members of the committee are the two KCC councillors for the area. So at the moment, Councillor Hook and Councillor Bowles. And then invitations have gone out to all of the parishes in the area, and I think individual parishes have nominated members of their councils to come on to the committee. Now those, the voting members, when the decisions are taken, are the Swale Borough members. The county councillors and parish councillors are non-voting members, but they're able to take part in the debates. Members of the public can also attend, and there is a public session at the beginning of the meeting where members of the public can speak. What kind of decisions are the area committees going to make? I think to a certain extent the 4 area committees are starting to work out what decisions they should be making. There isn't a particularly strict template for this, but I think clearly if they're going to be effective, they don't want to be spending lots of time discussing things which are matters that would have been better referred and dealt with by individual borough councillors. So they don't want to be picking up very specific ward issues unless they impact on the whole of the area. And they don't want to be spending lots of time discussing issues which are best dealt with at a full council level. So I think in a way the kinds of things they need to be picking up and discussing are those issues which are either unique to the Eastern Swale area, or issues where there are particular Swale East aspects to them. So to give you a couple of examples, we had a fairly lively and interesting, I think, discussion about linking parishes with Faversham town and Tenham more effectively for people who are cycling and walking. And that's obviously an area where there's a kind of sub borough, a kind of area aspect to it. And similarly, we also had quite the start of a discussion, which I think we'll be coming back to, about trying to improve the facilities for young people in the area. And again, that kind of activity is probably something that is quite effectively discussed on an area basis. Health is, as we know, an area where things are managed by the health service differently. In Eastern Swale, we're in a different area for the clinical commissioning group than the rest of the borough. Something like the Graveney solar farm is a parish level issue, but it's something that will heavily impact the rest of the area. So I think there are kind of areas of discussion where the area committee can play a role. How does it differ from the engagement forum? Well, my view of this as the vice chair of the area committee is that the engagement forum is probably a place for the sharing of information and an opportunity to get report backs from various parishes, from organisations that are outside I suppose the local democratic framework, like the police and potentially the health service, where the area committee is, I think, trying to start to make strategic decisions about the local area and potentially to influence Swale as a borough in taking perhaps more notice of the area, taking decisions which are more kind of granular and reflective of the views and the issues that exist at the local area. But that's my view, and I think I'm happy to answer questions, but I think it'd be quite interesting. I would find it interesting as the vice chair of the area committee to hear individual views about what people think the role of the area committee should be, and also how they think the engagement forum and the area committee can differentiate themselves. So I'll leave it there and open it for discussion.
Thank you, Julian. Have we any questions? Anyone with any questions? I can't see. Oh, Jeff.
Yes, who? Just a quick one, Julian. I haven't as yet heard back from Roger Truelove because as the chairman of the Swale Area Committee of Calc, I was asked to write to him because, as you're probably aware, there's this possibility or a request that was put forward by Councillor Whiting that there should be 2 parish council representatives on the area committee that should also have voting rights, and that was another thing that was done without talking to Swale Calc or any of the parishes. I appreciate that parishes have all got the opportunity to have a member on board, but what Councillor Whiting was requesting was that there should be 2 nominated Swale Area Committee members, so 8 councillors from Swale on the 4 area committees, all with voting rights. And please, will you send your people forward to the committee, Gov? Well, we took exception to that because that was done without any comment to us, no request, no, do you think this is a good idea? Would you like to, or anything? And that's currently going through at Swale. It may need that there's going to be a lot more discussion at Swale as to the legalities of allowing parish councillors to vote on issues that will be being dealt with by the Swale Area Committee, which I would hope they will allow us to get into because it is a local area committee. And I think there will be a lot more better representation from parishes on that basis. But again, I just raised the same thing again as I raised with John. This is being put through without actually talking to us. So I very much go on with what you're doing as a committee. I'm very much supportive of it, and I'd like to be involved and help as much as I can. But when Councillor Whiting does something like that and just puts it up for on his own behest. I just don't understand it. I can't fathom it.
Okay, I mean, I can't speak for why Councillor Whiting brought the proposal forward, but as you probably know, there was a debate at the council, and the outcome of that was that the matter's being referred back to the Policy Development and Review Committee, which I do happen to be a member of that. So I think we'll be discussing it in the next few weeks. I would hope that, as well as replying to you, I mean, I will ask him, Roger Truelove will also be forwarding the letter to Councillor Alistair Gould, who's actually the chair of the Policy and Development Committee, because I think obviously Calc's feedback is pretty fundamental if we're going to be, as a committee, discussing how we kind of move forward on the proposal.
Julian, and of course it's going back to the committee without having had any comments from Swale Calc.
No, that's right. I think I would imagine the committee would be quite keen to understand Calc's view. So I will go back to both Councillor Gould and Councillor Truelove on it.
Thank you. Any other comments? I think we might be to item 9, which is any other business. Has anyone got any other items?
Hello, yes, I have, if possible.
Yes. Yes.
I refer to the beginning of this forum when I quoted the any other business from the late minutes, Tuesday, 14th January 2020, a year ago.
Right.
It was agreed that the format of the meeting, previous meetings this was, format of the meeting did not work and well for the parish councils, and a different format will be considered. Moving on, if I may read the first line or first paragraph of the terms of reference. Headed, and this is really for the clerk and chair to perhaps confer with members, it's headed Faversham Local Engagement Forum. I think it perhaps should be headed Faversham and District Engagement Forum, terms of reference. Introduction, this document sets out will be reviewed on an annual basis. Well, we've missed 2 years. That's one comment. Purpose, to provide, this is the purpose or aims or objectives, whatever you want to call it, purpose, to provide an opportunity for local residents and communities in and around Faversham to come together to discuss local issues and have a say on service delivery, so people feel they are involved in civic society and enabled to take part and influence how the council and other public services are run. That's that. Then there's a 4-sided document. I think it's up for review. That follows on from Julian's summary of the Swale take on their picture, or our picture managed by Swale, shall we say. I still believe that this Faversham and District Engagement Forum and the Swale East, and maybe when it occurs, Faversham Future Forum, are all useful
interlinked
meetings. They do interlink.
Yes.
I don't know what everyone else thinks. That's it.
Thank you, Chris. And maybe I can discuss, or we can discuss that with the clerk and councillors. I think you're right. If things interlink, I think the more we share, the more we come together, the more we engage, the better it's got to be. Much better. So unless there's any other questions or comments there, I think we don't actually decide on the next date of a meeting, do we here? That would just come out from the town clerk, will it?
I'm just waiting. Depends whether we have elections or not, because the next one will be probably during PERDA if the elections are going ahead. But if there's no elections, then it will be March.
much. Councillor John Irwin.
Yes, Alison, just a suggestion. Obviously, I'm quite new to this, and I think we've only had maybe 3 since I've been a councillor. But what I think would be interesting, and I suppose this is the point Chris is making at the start. It does feel like it's a bit of a Faversham agenda, and we're updating other parishes. You know, I don't know if it's ever been tried before, but I think it might be useful if different parishes or a combination of more than one parish, you know, takes up the meeting, takes up the agenda, just to make it more of a, you know, a collaborative exercise. Because, you know, point taken, Jeff, tonight, you know, and others that maybe we're not working as collaboratively as we should, and we're not communicating as well as we should. But I think by looking at structuring this meeting differently, it could really help do that.
I think you could be right, John, and I think we would all like to collaborate more and feed each other information. So yes, hopefully we can get that sorted for the future. But I just want to thank all of you, those that have spoken tonight, those that have come up with questions. It's been very informative, and I hope we've moved along the road some distance, I think. So I quite enjoyed that. Thank you very much, and Happy New Year to everybody. We'll see what
Madam Mayor, if I can just respond to John's idea there.
Yes.
I was thinking along the lines, actually, perhaps we could follow our European friends have done for many years in terms of the European Council, and perhaps move around the chair of this committee and the owner, if you will, of the agenda, either on a meeting by meeting basis or on an annual basis, so that each parish gets its turn leading not only the agenda but chairing the meeting as well, so that, you know, in the spirit of collaboration, it's not owned by Faversham, it's owned by all of us, and each of us can take a good turn leading the agenda and leading the meetings.
I
think that's where John was coming from, and
idea.
I'd certainly agree with it.
Yeah, we can talk that through. We'll take that to the council. Yeah. Would everyone be happy with that, do we think? Yes, we're getting a nod here. So we'll look into that then. So thank you everyone for your comments. I think hopefully we've moved forward, and that's a good way to go, isn't it? Forward, not backward. So thank you all, and good night, and see you see you hopefully soon. Thank you.
Night.
Night. Thank you.
Bye.